Recording started.
Talk show. Recorded live.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number 509. My name is Eric Nilsson. And with me today, I have my regular co-host, Corey Romero. Today is Wednesday, April 29th, 2020. Corey, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Eric. How about yourself?
I'm surviving. I'm staying sane. I think that's my new slogan is stay sane, working out of my garage, right? So I am still sane. I know my name, right? And life continues on here. It's becoming regular. How about yourself?
Yeah. It's Groundhog Day, right? Kind of the same thing repeated every day. I go down in my basement, I work, and my wife helps homeschool my two kids, which is fantastic, but it's very repetitive for sure.
We are definitely getting lots of family time, and we have stayed quarantined. I did break quarantine one time this week where I did have my two kids come and visit. Now, they have been pretty strict on being quarantined themselves, so we did reach out and actually, had some time with my children, right, that don't live with me. So that's but it has been challenging, but it has also become the new normal. I do a lot more gardening now, right? We joked before the show, maybe we should call this the V gardening show, right? Because all of us have to get outside and breathe some of that fresh air. On the show today, we are going to be talking about Test Drive with Rory Clements. Rory Clements is on the call with us. So Rory, we'll introduce you in a second, but just covering the topics, Test Drive, we're going to cover Test Drive, which is a great way to get experience on platforms. It's kind of what it says it is. So we're going to go through Test Drive with Rory Clements, Senior Director of Solutions Management. But before we do that, we'll hit the news. As always, we have a few little news items. Then I'll start first, then I'll pass it over to my friend Corey Romero. So today, we know that VMworld submissions are closing Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific. So Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you're going to be doing sessions, we have announced that VMworld is going to go be an online conference late September. So it's going to be a different format this year. But we are going to have structured content, and we are talking about some interesting ways to do it this year. So we are just not going to rinse, repeat, and put boring PowerPoints online for this the event this year. We are going to do a better event with a little bit more interactive content, as well as maybe Netflix type consumable content, so that you can binge watch stuff, or you can just have it playing in the background all day long, the event. And then we'll have, if you've ever been to League of Legends, where you've watched League of Legends tournaments, they have things going on on Twitch, but then they have the main event scheduled at a time. We're going to do some format like that. We're still working through the details of that, but it should be a fun event. We're going to not just do the standard slides online, bore you to death with PowerPoint. It will be something different. Don't know what that's going to be quite yet, but we are working through those details. The point is, call for papers ends this Friday. Get your papers in, and it should be a fun, cool event. And we will be getting that content out to our users this year like we do, but just in a different format. So that's what's going on. Speaking of a live stream content, VMware Code sessions have been live streaming. So we have power sessions that we do at VMworld every year. We've just decided to bring that in and do that in-house and do it all year long as part of the Code program. So if you join code.vmware.com, there we get you on a mailing list, a monthly mailing list of all the Code sessions. We've got Code sessions live streaming going in April as well as May and June scheduled up. You can go to the Code blog, blogs.vmware.com/code, and check out the live streams that are going to be happening from the power sessions. A lot of good topics are going to be covered there. We've already had 2 of them so far this month, and we're ramping up the number of power sessions that are going to be Code topics going forward. So go join Code and check out blogs.vmware.com/code, the power sessions that are out there on schedule for May. Okay, that's that. And Corey, I know you guys are busy with vExperts, and you've had some promotion of blog articles. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's happening with some of the blog articles?
Yeah, absolutely. So recently we've been so start off. If you haven't heard of Dynamic Signal, it's the VMware social media platform. It's a way to submit your articles through Twitter, or whatever. Sorry, not through Twitter. Submit your blog articles, and then folks see those blog articles like myself. Folks see those blog articles like myself. And so we've been tweeting out the expert blog articles. Well, I can't talk today. I don't know why. Blog articles over the past month or two. And one of the articles that we shared was the vExpert article titled ESXi 6.7 to ESXi 7 upgrade. Now, we share this stuff and people see it, but this one's pretty impressive. We had 19,000 impressions on this one tweet, and we had 500 clicks off to this article, right? So, if you want to share your articles and get this out and broaden your community awareness of what you're doing, check out the vExpert articles. Ping me if you're a vExpert and you're not using this. I know we do have an upcoming session for the VMware social media advocacy platform. We're going to go over this in detail. So that's what we've been doing with the vExpert program as far as sharing content. Another thing on the vExpert program that we're doing is we've recently launched the vExpert sub-programs. We've got 6 active, and we have a 7th coming out. We mentioned that last week, which is vExpert application modernization. So anyways, to cut things short, kind of where I'm going with this is we are going to have a community application programming program kickoff, which we're going to have 30 or so vExperts who know PHP and MySQL, where we've got 35 fixes and features that are going to come out in the vExpert portal. So we're doing that to help the community, to help vExperts, and to push things forward and make a better program.
I know that there's a lot of cool ideas that you guys have been working on, and the vExpert app itself is becoming, a true asset to VMware as a company, right? Because it's a really great advocacy app that rolls everybody together. You get badging. So now, not only is vExpert an award that you get for being active in social channels and being an influencer, it is now becoming an influencer app that helps you become a better influencer. So I love that feature that you're rolling in, where you're going to be able to kind of use the vExpert app as a diary that keeps track of all the things that you've done through advocacy throughout the year, so that then at the end of the year, your application will be just basically your diary entry. And then your diary has helpful hints on how to actually be a better influencer. So really teaching people how to take advantage of, influencer marketing in general, right? So nice job.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And now
Thank
the community, these 25 community programmers are actually going to be helping build out new features. So it's basically vExperts helping vExperts even become better vExperts. So I love that.
Absolutely.
All right. So shout out to YouTube. We do live stream on YouTube. Speaking of advocates, the YouTube channel that we have is youtube.com/vbarbecue, BARBECUE. Go check it out. Give us a follow. Say hello. We live stream this. It's kind of funny because we just have cameras pointing at ourselves doing the interviews, kind of like the Howard Stern thing, where the content is in the interview, not in the live stream. But if you want to go check us out and see what we look like and say hello, you can go give that channel a follow, like us, and that's great. And everybody, one of these days, we're going to do just a YouTube primer for vExperts as well, just to get everybody a sense of how they can use video vlogging in their outbound content. All right, that's it. We are going to do a vBarbecue report at the end of the show, and I got to say, I'll do a shout out. We have some great ideas. I learned a tip from Roger Lund about when you're barbecuing, what to do with some of your condiments. So I'll throw that in at the end. And I know that Tony Foster and Corey both did barbecue as we enter into the summer, so we'll get there at the end of the show. So hang with us to the end of the show. And with that, we will transition to the topic of the show today, which is, again, test drive with Rory Clements. So, Rory, thanks for being patient as we make it through the news. Why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you? How long have you been at VMware? And where has your career taken you throughout the last number of years that you've been in your career? So,
sure. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's a real pleasure to be on here today. So, as you said, my name is Rory Clements, and I'm a Senior Director in Solution Management, which is part of the marketing organization. I've been at VMware now in the States for about 8 years. and prior to that, I was at VMware in the UK. So I started basically as a systems engineer for desktop when I joined in the UK, and that's kind of evolved into sort of what we're doing now. I worked in the EUC organization for quite a while until about 4 or 5 years ago when we actually went into the global team. So pretty much done the same thing through that now, but now I have a little team, and we kind of build. Our job is really to kind of build tools and platforms and things like that to kind of help people get their hands on, experience the product, and actually help increase the awareness and skills and those kind of things as well. So not quite learning, but more of like a sales enablement tool, pre-sales tool that we have out there. And Test Drive is one of those kind of crown jewel platforms that we've built.
It's neat. So maybe we could talk a little bit about the history of sales enablement when it comes to POCs and how the sales process. We don't really talk that much on the sales process, but I know a lot of the experts and a lot of people that listen to our podcast are out in the field doing exactly this, buying product or supporting their consultants. They're supporting. So history of POCs in the sales process. When you talk about enterprise software, why don't you give us a little bit of that before we jump into what we've got today?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think back in the day when it was just vSphere, it was fairly easy to articulate the value prop, and didn't really need to do much showing. It's just more kind of telling. I think as we kind of got more, VMware's kind of innovation has developed. It's ended up being we have lots and lots of products that we have out there. It becomes kind of increasingly difficult to kind of show, to kind of articulate what the value prop of that is without kind of showing it. So one of the first things that we were tasked with, especially in end user computing, where a lot of people want to see, are you giving me a virtual desktop from Singapore to New York? I want to see what it kind of looks like. I want to see what that kind of user experience is like. We found that, it became necessary to build an environment which, before it was kind of called Test Drive, it was just this thing that we had where we could show rather than tell, customers, partners, what this stuff actually looked like, how it behaved when it was actually built in a real world environment. So it's different to kind of like home labs and things like that, or HOLs and those bits, which are still necessary. But the whole point of Test Drive, the whole reason we did it, was to make it kind of like as real world as possible, so that I could show you something working and then kind of eliminate the need for a POC. I think you alluded to it there. I think back in the day, it was kind of a couple of meetings, and then you'd have me as a specialist or an SE in the meeting, and then the kind of after I'd gone through my PowerPoint deck, the next step was, right, let's have a proof of concept. And then you were sort of in this, month-long process of building stuff in customer sites and showing it working. So, those are the sort of sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you point on that too, because we have our home labs, but you're not going to take a home lab and go to a customer site and say, here, let me demo this off my home lab, right? Because
you'd be surprised how many people still do, and I think people still do that as well. So, and I think there's nothing particularly wrong with that, showing kind of features and functionality. It's just I've had it myself. Where you demo something from your home lab and your internet's super slow and it just looks terrible. So you're not really showing it in the best light.
Well, and it's also kind of a professional thing where if you have to explain to a VP in the room that you're actually doing this on your home lab, it just kind of makes VMware look like we're a bunch of kids running it. Now, there's certainly, I'm not bad-mouthing people that do it, but there is certainly this, and you can't go to HOL and say, hey, I'm showing you this stuff on a HOL class right now. And I know people have done that with NSX, where they didn't have it in their home lab. They needed to show somebody some features, but it's kind of like that. But I don't want to run a 3-month POC. I just want to get you comfortable with the slide deck that I'm presenting. Where is that middle ground, right? Where my home lab is kind of cheesy and it's on the x86 hardware from 4 years ago because it works fine for me, but it's not the kind of CPU horsepower that I might want to show. I can't take you to HOL and show you that, even though I've done all the HOLs and I know it. There is that sweet spot, but I don't want to actually have to go buy hardware and do a full POC on-prem for you either. So what's kind of those solutions? So I could see that where that hole existed.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we did do with Test Drive. So not only is it something that VMware guys can go out and actually show and use and demonstrate to customers, one of the cool things you can kind of do with it is you can invite customers, so if you've got the experts out there who are consultants working on site and they want to invite their customer to kind of use this for 30 days, they can totally do that. And they can have full access to everything that we've got in there, kick the tires on it and see it in a real, in as real world environment as we can present without having to build it on their site, basically.
Right. I can definitely see that. So the industry has moved from, long extensive engagements to sell software, right? And you see this pressure to actually move quicker and be more agile, right? Because I think that's also an industry trend that's happening where, you on one hand you have cloud services where you can enable stuff right away, but in reality a lot of our purchases aren't cloud services, they're still on-prem services, but they want speed that's more agile than spending 6 months defining things. There's the happy middle ground, which I think you guys are addressing too, from the standpoint of just speed of which you can, get access to software that's pre-configured and installed for you.
And that's a good point actually. I mean, I think if you go to like AWS, they're like obviously the industry leader in the cloud side, and it's you can basically say I want to try this out right now. You get pretty much instant frictionless access to it, and there you are. But you're kind of in an unconfigured blank space where it's like you get to go, you've got to then go and sort of tool it up and make it work. What
Right.
we've tried to done with the test drive side is that it is a pre-configured environment in that it's got integrations with things like Office 365, SaaS apps, NSX is in there, all the different kind of VMware portfolio of products is in there as well, pre-configured, ready to go. So it is that kind of middle ground
Right.
from either HOL tech side and then test drive, and then go on to actually deploying it in anger.
So we haven't really got into what test drive is yet, and I'm going to wait for a second before I have you do the formal official description of test drive,
Sure.
because I'm going to before we go there, I wanted to. We went through the history of the POC and the sales process. I want to ask, like, there are these kind of ideas that start to crop up in the enterprise, and so many of them are ideas that start. But it's one thing to have an idea. I always tell people ideas are super cheap. Right? Like I can come up with 500 ideas in 7 minutes. Right? I could build 100 years worth of work in 7 minutes. How did you? Yeah, Corey's laughing right now. Because he knows that drill. Question for you is, how did you go from idea to start actually getting resource to implement this idea, right? Like, tell us the history of how this came up.
Sure. So I think it came to my team, me and the guys in my team in EUC to actually stand something up to do it. So we started extremely small. To give a not to skip ahead too much, but we built all the kind of vSphere dependent infrastructure that we built for test drive is all completely separate from any VMware systems at all. It's all built. All that stuff is built out of IBM SoftLayer or Bluemix. So we traditionally use that quite a lot anyway for like testing and reference architecture stuff and bits like that we used to do. So started small by just having literally a couple of servers in SoftLayer that I managed to twist the arm of my boss to pay for a couple of months, and we built it up on that and started trialing it with some of our bigger partners and using it for events like VMworld and things like that, where we actually had to kind of where we wanted to show stuff live and for real. So it started very small, but it's kind of one of those things where we kind of built it and sort of asked for permission retrospectively rather than sort of going to kind of a big committee about it. But it started small and just as a tool, and then the EUC guys would be using it, and then it kind of grew from there, really.
So it was just in EUC, you noticed a demand for this, right? And you thought with your partner ecosystem, having something that your partners could just point at, right, and use. And I know how that partner marketing world goes, where partners are super overburdened and overstretched. And, when you talk about partner marketing, they got like a half a person that does it sometimes because partners are all about billable hours and optimizing. They don't have a lot of extra money to pay for giant marketing staffs, and so you just don't have that. So the need came up out of the idea of enabling partners, right? And
partners enabling the field to get their hands on it and see it, as well as our community guys, as well as partners and that sort of stuff. So and like I used to work at a VMware partner, and it's pretty impossible to get any kind of budget to build demo labs, that sort of stuff, to be able to showcase the stuff. So this in a way is like a kind of multi-million-dollar demo lab that a partner can just use, and we have tons and tons of partners using this right now as well. So Dell, obviously, big guys, people like even Google use this a lot for their kind of for the Chromebooks for education side. We've got Apple using it. So with several of our large kind of industry ecosystem partners. NVIDIA are another huge user of it as well, and they actually white label the test drive stuff out for their NVIDIA Trigrid demos, which is based on their 3D acceleration for Horizon desktops.
Yeah, I just on chat, one of our guys on chat says that he actually loves using it, right? So yeah.
Awesome. Tell him the check's in the post. Yeah.
I know they caught my attention because I think I was at Robin Matlock's, one of Matlock's reviews where I was coming in for the code program just to kind of be in the room to talk about where we are with code and what we're doing with developers. And you presented Test Drive, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know we had this, because the reality is we've always had this hole for me where people were using HOL to do kind of the complicated stuff because I don't have time at home to set up an NSX on my network, or I don't have enough network gear to set up NSX, or I just don't feel like I want to spend time making my home lab do this component of the SDDS stack.
Yeah.
So I saw this. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. We should have you on the show, just because I only think maybe 25% of the people that are out there even know that it exists. In fact, the fact that somebody on chat actually knew, and I'll just say it was Tony Foster. Tony Foster says he's used it. That's actually, that's great, and that's why I thought it would be great to have you on the show. So,
yeah, sure. I mean, we've tried to do it sort of grassroots. It is a kind of it started as like a grassroots thing, and we've gone out. We've done a lot of like partner, VMUG kind of enablement, that sort of stuff. So it's kind of a lot of the practitioners and a lot of the guys that listen to your show. Hopefully, I think a lot of that.
I've heard of it.
There's quite a good awareness of that stuff out there. But you're right. I mean, I think HOLs. Don't get me wrong. These are they're extremely important part of that whole kind of journey of learning and evaluate and validating these sort of solutions. But I think Test Drive kind of does plug that gap in the middle of where it's more real world performance as well. So you can kind of really see what this stuff looks like, when deployed for real.
Right. So, okay. So I've said I was going to give you time. So let's just stop here and say, okay, give me what is Test Drive? Because we've kind of bounced around it. So let's just
sure.
Do the due diligence here and say, what is Test Drive? Where is it? And what does it give people?
So I've got there's like an easy one-liner really to remember for Test Drive. It's just basically, it's a self-service product discovery platform available to everyone at VMware, all our partners, all our experts who request access, and our customers, which gives you self-service instant access to a globally available environment with as much of our stuff shoved in there as possible, essentially. So where it grew from just EUC, it now has pretty much the full range of software and infrastructure virtualization products in there as well. So obviously all built on vSphere and the latest versions. It's got NSX. At the moment, we've got NSX T and V at the latest levels. We're just migrating up to the latest versions there. Things like PKS, vSAN, SD-WAN by VeloCloud, that stuff's all in there. So really, it's just, zero. If you want to go, 0 to 60, you just want to jump in, see how this stuff kind of interoperates and works. That's what it is.
Right, and I think you get this environment and it spins it up for 30 days or some number like that, 30 or 60.
Well, no, so the Test Drive environment's always there. It's always on. None of it is kind of provisioned on demand. It's all there. You can have, if you were a customer of one of us, we could invite you for 30 days. What I am actually going to do today at the end, I'll do at the end. I've got a special registration code for Test Drive that anyone listening, if they want to go ahead and sign up. Normally, if you're not a VMware person or a partner, you'd have to be invited to use it. But I'm going to give you guys a reg code today, which means you'll be able to sign up with it and have a year's all-in access. Eat as much as you like and use it as much as you like, and invite your own customers to it.
Fantastic! Woo! Yeah. So Corey Romero, this is your shot. We said we were going to enable the vExperts for a test drive, right? And we're going to give you a 1-year access code for any vExpert that's out there, or for that matter, anybody that wants to use it that's listening to a podcast. This is the way to do it, because we're all the major influencers. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have been around the VMware for quite a while. So that's great. That's what I saw when I saw this.
This is awesome.
We need to get this.
I am excited.
Right. In fact, I just want to go play with vSphere 7 because I haven't had time myself to upgrade to vSphere 7 on my home lab. And
we're just about to roll out vSphere 7. There's slight couple of different. There's the one thing that's holding us up from vSphere 7 at the moment is that PKS 1.7 isn't compatible with it. So we're just waiting for a patch release on that, and then we'll upgrade it. So we tend to do all this stuff, out of office hours and things like that. So the environment will just automatically become, automatically have the latest versions in there as soon as we're ready. We try and aim to have it either on day 0 of when something gets released, or at least at most a week or two afterwards. This particular upgrade, we've just had to wait for the PKS guys to to get their pencils out and write us a patch for vSphere 7.
Sure, we should just come up with the gardening topic here, because I mean you just nailed the whole show home, right? It's like it's like, oh, and by the way, we're going to give everybody a VExpert a license key. You got a whole year to go play with all our software. And oh yeah, we're just getting ready for vSphere 7. We're waiting for the latest Kubernetes thing. Then we're going to have that too. So I can go start writing my YAML files and building.
Totally, yeah. We've Tanzu. We've got Tanzu. We've already actually got the we've got Tanzu mission control tenant set up already. It's not live yet in there, but we're just going through last bits of testing and other bits and pieces, some other patching and other stuff to do. But that'll be there in the first half of this year. And everything that we're talking about, everything that's going to be spoke about at VMworld, especially for the online event, any of that stuff will be in test drive as well.
Yeah, I think we're just going to create a sub brand for VExperts called the Home Lab Service by Test Drive.
That's it. Home Lab as a service, yeah.
Home Lab as a service, right? You just clickety click and away you go, and you have your own little home lab. And oh, by the way, we keep it upgraded. Oh wait, you're supposed to learn how to upgrade, but so
well,
there
that's
are
what you use the HOLs for, for those bits. If you want to do those bits, definitely that's why they fit in, and they are an integral, important part of all this stuff as well.
And that's what I would say, which is interesting about this, is that it is a home lab as a service, but we're giving you the home lab. You don't have to spend time speccing hardware and doing that. There's one thing you don't get to do, right, which is kind of fun for some of us. But at the same time, if you're in a hurry to get access to something, to learn something, or to engage or show customers, this is a quick way to do that. And we do abstract out some of the needless tasks. I mean, if you've already learned how to install vSphere, do you really need to learn to install it again and again and upgrade it and keep it up? Or can you just use test drive? Then you can focus on learning the upper level stack components of how to manage more complicated things like Kubernetes YAML files. That certainly abstracts out some of the mundane things that you don't have to worry about, because you have a team that's keeping test drive instances up and running and up to date.
It's a small team, but that is what the guys do. There's literally like 3 or 4 guys that kind of run all this infrastructure as well. So, and it's based, we've got like you said, things like PKS stuff like that. That's there's more stuff. There's the new stuff is coming, and that'll be in there in the first half of this year as well.
When I worked at Sun Microsystems once a quarter had a thing called Clean Sweep, which was basically your chance to take all your old gear and set it out in the hallways, at these designated spots, and they would just come through and recycle all of these old, machines, which are. So I just see the elimination of clean sweeps. I don't know what I'm going to do with all my spare space, because if I start using this too much, I just won't have gear sitting around all over the place. Which I got to say is.
The engineers will always have labs at home, I still do as well, right? But it's just it's mainly for having, it's difficult to have an environment where you have everything in there. So test drive, it's vSAN, NSX, it's got VROPS, it's got Wavefront, PKS, all the Horizon stuff, all the end user computing bits and pieces, all that stuff is in there. So when you're looking at, what it looks like as a kind of holistic environment, it's a much better idea of how it would run in. Like most customer environments would have, some or all of this stuff in there as well. So it's a lot more it's a lot more analogous to how a customer would deploy.
It is very strange, because at VMware, I don't see good ideas come to fruition very often, right? Like we have a lot of ideas, and bad ideas bubble around and then get dumped, and good ideas bubble around and get dumped. And so once in a while, we get a good idea that's really good that makes it, like sort of the VExpert program, right? It's one of these programs that was really good, and it made it, and it's been great, right? And we have the HOL environment, which is a really good environment and has grown, and it has really enabled business, right? And I see Test Drive as one of these programs, right, where it's going to be a brand, it's going to be there, it's just going to be one of these things that we all learn how to use and do, and it will be effective at solving one of the problems that exists for all of us, right?
Sure.
Wavefront. When you talk Wavefront, is Wavefront installable on-prem? Is that how that works? I thought
that's a you have a collector on-prem, and then it goes up to a SaaS service. Is how we've implemented it there. So you just have like a virtual appliance that you deploy, and then it's all.
So Test Drive does give you some support for some of these cloud services like Wavefront.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so that's already in there. So yeah, you can use that, and we're using that as part of the PKS environment that's in there too. But then we've also got all the VROPS stuff is in there, the VROPS for Horizon, all that stuff's in there as well. So yeah, there's a lot of that in there too. We're looking at some of the future expansion to plug in things like VMC on VMware on AWS, those bits to have some infrastructure there as well, but all part of the same test drive infrastructure. I think
But
if you use Velo, if you use the SD-WAN by Velo solution that we've got in there, that's actually hosted in AWS, and that's connected into our test drive networks as well. So it's all kind of part of the same environment.
that's fascinating. So you mentioned IBM's cloud, which is Blue Mix, or I
Yeah,
thought it was
Bluemix,
Blue Mix. I've been calling it Blue Max forever. I don't know why. I have a machine at home that we call Blue Max. I think it's just a Freudian slip there. That my kid built a PC desktop tower when he was like in second grade, and we've constantly upgraded it year after year after year. And he's now works at Roku as a hardware engineer. He's like 28 years old, and we still have Blue Max. So I think it's just Freudian. But so you talk about being in Blue Mix as part of the service, but then you have other pieces that are also in other clouds.
Mhm. Yeah.
You really do have a hybrid cloud environment where you're delivering services. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got AWS in there, like I said, for supporting SD-WAN and some of the other bits. We've got Azure in there, which is showing the Horizon Cloud and Azure piece. VMC, we do have some stuff for VMC that we did for VMworld specifically, which isn't sort of part of the main experience, but we are looking at expanding into VMC permanently for some Horizon bits and for some other workload pieces later on this year. It's just time of getting it plumbed in. But because it's all built on NSX and all these kind of easy technologies to kind of be able to branch out and do these kind of site-to-site VPNs and transparent networking, it's pretty easy. So it's a pretty comprehensive environment. The bulk of the infrastructure lives in the US. However, we've got data centers in Singapore, also in Amsterdam for Europe, and a couple in the US. So we can kind of do EMEA, APJ, and the US as part of this too.
This is awesome. I got to say, this has been a problem that I've had, even getting some access to cloud services. All the experts like want to shoot me in the head, not literally, but it's like I try to see like how do we get some access to some cloud services, and it's like it's problematic, right? I can't do
Totally.
it. I can't get licenses. It costs too much to run AWS. We actually needed a funded program to the tune of $1 million or $2 worth of budget to pay for compute resources to do
Sure.
this. But it ends up enabling business, right? It enables the experts. It enables our influencers. It enables everybody. But it's been like try to get a VMC license, impossible.
It is expensive, yeah. And
Yeah.
the bare metal hosting is expensive as well, right? So even like IBM, very quickly becomes expensive if you start scaling out and going into different geos and that sort of stuff. But we've managed to kind of we're constantly sort of optimizing the sizing and scaling to make sure the value it's giving is kind of
Right, and to the experts that to choose to go do this, you have to be respectful of what you're spinning up because it does cost us money to keep things spun up, and so we want it to be effective, but we also want you to shut things down or use it appropriately accordingly. Right?
I think like this kind of audience as well, Eric, they're the perfect kind of people to feed back as well, to tell us where there's stuff that isn't jiving with what they're seeing out in the in the real world in use cases and stuff like that, and we. All that feedback, good and bad. It's nice to have a bit of good feedback on the call today. But it's, anything at all that could be improved or any sort of feedback that we can have. Just you can do it all through the test drive site. You can just submit feedback through there, and we'd be happy to have it because we need that to keep it competitive, and keep it kind of, keep it fresh and keep it useful.
Yeah, and in a real sense, POCs, that's what POCs are about as well, making lists of things that customers need better, right? And then, we normally a POC used to go through like a couple rounds, right? You would go through the first round and then you'd go through a second round. And by the time you're done, you were committing to what you were going to build for them so that they would sign that big license, right? If it was a big enough POC, we'd have the engineering team show up and talk to you about what we're going to do in the kernel just to make it work for you, right? Or adding features. So that would make sense that you would have that bi-directional communication as part of this, because any good POC system would allow people to do that.
Totally, yeah, and it's also showing, I mean, VMware might, we have a lot of our kind of software products are developed sort of separately from each other. So you don't know if an NSX upgrade is going to break something on a Horizon server, for example. So test drive's a great way to kind of prove that stuff out as well and show if there's interoperability bugs and stuff like that, which you'd only ever really see in a real world deployment anyway. So again, that's stuff that for the guys like the vExperts on this call that would use it, and for like our field guys, it's invaluable for that purpose.
Okay, so it's always we're drinking the Kool-Aid here, but I'll back up a little bit, right? Make this a little bit harder interview. It's not like a Larry King thing, but so limitations, differences between home labs, differences between HOL. We've touched on this a little bit. So we've talked about how great it is. What should you stay away from? What is it not for, right? So
Yeah,
we talked about obviously install and config because
yeah.
you guys are managing the install config. Are there other checkbox things where you should say, yeah, this isn't probably going to be what this is for?
Yeah, mainly it's on the admin side. So we have, we expose a lot of the admin interfaces, but we don't allow destructive changes. Pretty much is one of the biggest limitations. So that's totally different from like a hands-on lab environment where you can go in, you can do whatever you like, destroy stuff. In test drive, you can often see a lot of the admin UIs, see the configurations, and see where they are, but you can't change them because obviously it's a shared environment for everybody. So if you go in and sort of delete stuff, it's going to affect everybody else who's on there. So really, that's one of the bigger limitations. But it's probably the only one is that it's admin rights in there. There's some a lot of stuff you can do. I mean, so as a good example, things like our Horizon desktops, you can actually go into those and using app volumes, you can install your own applications in there. So that's a big thing for people doing POCs, especially on the EUC side. Is you can give these guys a test drive accounts, and they can go and they can install their own apps into those desktops to see if they work, and that's quite a big thing, to be able to do that. In terms of doing other workloads and bits and pieces, on the server side, again, not as much control there and not as much latitude as you get in something like a sandbox or an HOL. We do have sandbox environments though, especially on the digital workspace side. So, for example, you can see a fully configured like Workspace ONE Intelligence or AirWatch example where you can manage devices. We can also spin up sandboxes in there, which is on our production SaaS tenants for things like AirWatch and Workspace ONE. You can actually go ahead and deploy them as sandboxes for you to go in and have full control over in that respect as well. So there's where we can, we give like the full admin accounts, but really, the test drive side is mainly about experiencing, seeing, and getting your hands on with all the stuff working together.
Okay. Next thing I had on my list of things, which I can't remember because I didn't write this stuff down, but as part of the sales enablement, you do also have another tool that helps you guide you through the sales enablement
Sure.
journey. And I
Yeah.
thought I'd just do a shout out and talk a little bit about that as well. That might not be for vExperts per se or people on this podcast, but let's talk about it because I think it's something that's interesting for all of us to learn a little bit about.
Sure. So we have another platform that we've developed, which is called Pathfinder, and that's
Right. Pathfinder, sorry.
that's really just a place to to be able to put together. If you ever used Salesforce has a great tool called Trailhead, which is like all their kind of learning, all the different bits and pieces, all in one place, like a catalog of things you can do and things you can, demos, white papers, hands-on experiences, that kind of stuff. So Pathfinder is essentially that. It's if you look at the latest stuff that we just did for business continuity with the advent of the COVID-19 breakout on the VMware page, where it's like actually click here to learn more about business continuity for end user computing, for example. That's all hosted on our Pathfinder side. So that brings together all, there's a lot of awesome information at VMware for most of these products and solutions, but it's kind of in a lot of different places. So Pathfinder just really aggregates that and brings it together. And that's where you can come in, you can do a test drive, you can take a hands-on lab, you can watch a video, read a white paper, look at a reference architecture, that kind of stuff. And that's all in there too. So those two, so Pathfinder and Test Drive are two very heavily linked systems, but you can use Test Drive independent of the other.
So let me regurgitate some of this so that in case I just zoned out looking at the bright lights in my studio here. So Pathfinder, is it for anyone? Like, can I come in and just use it? So if I want to understand how to sell, NSX or NSXT networking, that I can come in and then Pathfinder will give me the necessary content, HOLs, a test drive, plus additional documentation. Maybe even you showcase my podcast going, hey, these are the kind of things I want to learn in order to be able to, understand how to take a customer through this journey. Or if I'm a customer.
Yeah, totally. So it's for everybody. It's full customer facing. It's for anyone that wants to use it. It's just pathfinder.vmware.com. You go in there and we've got some paths, which are basically things like I want to learn about, network security, or I want to learn about Carbon Black with, in server workloads or in desktop workloads. We've got paths there for that. And it kind of just gives you a step-by-step set of things that you can do. You don't have to follow it kind of religiously. You can hop around and do stuff. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's kind of a good starting place, and it starts you at the kind of like the learning part. If you were totally new to it and didn't know anything about it, you could learn about it. Then there's an evaluation part, which is where you're kind of hands-on labs, those kind of hands-on labs, test drives, those bits live. And then there's a validation bit, which is around, doing TCO ROI calculators, that kind of stuff, and kind of business, proven customer case studies, that kind of thing.
And
So it's just information structured in that way.
It's funny because I'm a big fan of just lists, right? Some people ask me like, "Oh, how do I do this? Or what do I do?" It's like, you got a pencil, got a paper, make a list, right? Make a list of things that you need to do. And when people ask me like, "Oh, what about enabling? How would we build a fancy tool that would allow me to showcase all this?" I'm like, "How about we just make an fancy tool, which is, I open up VI and I make a list. 1, do this. 2, do that. Here's a list of things that you need to go do or learn, and if you get through that list, you're gonna be there." So Pathfinder is, in a sense, just like all this content exists all over the place, and it's just make a list, and here it is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is.
What you're interested in, and here's a list of things that you should probably go do to make that happen.
That's right. Yeah, and we're not reinventing the wheel. It's just VMware. We're our own kind of worst enemy. VMware. We produce tons of awesome content, but we don't then do that last step, which is like you said, Eric. It's like make a list and show people where to actually go to get it.
There's 2 things that I joke about, and I'll just do, because this is a fun podcast too. Like, there's 2 things in life that I joke about, and I'm being sarcastically funny, right, but also serious at the same time. Which I'll start with the first one first, which is when people say, "What's my globalization strategy?" I always laugh and I go, "Everybody has to just go get an English book and learn it." And the reason that is because if you're in community and you're social, if everybody's speaking different languages, then we're not going to be very community oriented. We're not going to be very social oriented. So there has always been that. And then the second thing is, when people come and talk to me about search, right? I always just cringe because, "Oh, well, we can optimize our search because, so they focus on platforms as making a really great search. And I'm like, how about we just make a really good list?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because search is so random, right? Like, and you can actually have a human make a really good list and then show it. That's like worth $1 bazillion compared to putting money into like search tech that scrapes everything. And it's like, why don't we just? It doesn't change that often. This stuff comes out once a year. We could just update a list. And so Pathfinder for me is exactly that, right? Which is, you have humans looking at it and building a list of stuff that you should go consume in order to make business happen.
Sure. Yeah, and that is basically what that's for. It's to have an easy button for one place to go, and as fewer kind of clicks as possible for people to have what they need.
Right.
Yeah, and the guys on the call, check that out as well. That's, again, any feedback on any of those bits is will be totally invaluable.
Right. So Pathfinder, PATHFINDER.VMware.com and testdrive.VMware.com. And people should be in pretty good shape there. So
absolutely.
That's which I there are very few. I sit through CMO staff meetings. I only go once every 6 months. I get called into one, and I'm usually asleep and usually just going, "This is so not for me." I'm down in implementation and working with people that are building things, and I sit through these meetings. And when you went through test drive, I was like, "Oh, wow, they're probably going to let this guy go," right? Because nothing survives that's any good. Like, I'm just joking.
I dodged that bullet this time, thankfully. Yeah.
So that's neat. So then, to kind of wrap up for the last 5 or 10 minutes here, I always like to go, so, it's a logical question. Go, where are you going? What are you prepping for VMworld? What's driving you? What's making you excited this year? This is the year of COVID, so that question is a little bit odder this year, right? Because right now my big priority is I don't want to get sick and die. Other than that, that's my 2020 goals. But assuming that you don't get sick and die, what is your 2020 goals? What are you trying to do here? Do you have any new features or things that you're trying to expand? And then I always close with, can the community help you in any way? So.
Totally, yeah. So, and I think, like we said, we're sort of developing, bringing in all the new products, bringing all the stuff from the latest kind of VCF announcements and making sure all that stuff's in there. Plus, for VMworld this year, it's going to be, very different. Normally, we use Test Drive in pretty much all the kind of Solution Expo area at VMworld. So all the kind of demos that you see that aren't kind of canned are generally running out of Test Drive. So we're going to be doing the same, but probably on a bigger scale this year, because I think there's going to be more people just kind of casually coming in and using it, rather than the 30,000 odd people that you'd see, in San Francisco, for example. I think there's going to be a lot more people. So we're actually working, with those teams that are building that online experience for VMworld. I'm going to make sure that Pathfinder and Test Drive are sort of pretty intrinsically linked into that as well as part of the experience for delivery of the digital content too. So beyond the kind of Netflix programming like you were talking about earlier, Eric, I think once you kind of drop down and you want to do breakouts and you want to go get hands-on with, NSX, for example, that'll be stuff that we'll be serving out of Pathfinder and Test Drive. So for me and my team, this is going to be that's actually a big effort. We're scaling up and making sure that we can, take that increased amount of, user usage essentially. And really just making sure that it's kind of rock solid and working with all the new stuff that's coming too.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. I can imagine that anything that's digital, where you don't have to go into a building and engage with the servers in a rack, yet get experience and learn, is going to be popular for a little while. Until again, we're just so burnt out with digital content that we're all going to just go outside and do barbecue and play.
Barbecue and gardening. Yeah.
Or corn or something, because I could definitely see that this stuff is amazing and enabling it. And as our jobs transition to quasi real-time online versus physical, I think this will be a nice thing to build into your arsenal. And certainly for the next 6 months, we're all going to have lots of garage time or in your office time. Your library in the back there. I love the library in your background. Is that?
No, it's a picture. It's not real. It's just a picture.
That's not real.
No, it is, but it's hardly a library. Yeah, it's full of like.
No, is that real or is it a backdrop?
No, it's real. I was kidding. It is real.
I was like, wow, you look really good for a
It's real.
Yeah, all right. I got it. That's cool. I like it. That's better than I got to do something with my garage here.
Like we said before, Eric, really in terms of how the guys can help is just give us the feedback. Even in fact, bad feedback's better because it tells us where we're going wrong and where we can improve stuff. So any feedback there. And like I said, for the guys that are listening to the podcast, if you go to testdrive.vmware.com, if you go to sign up, there's an area where you can say, I've got a code. And if in that code field, if you guys just write podcast, the word podcast, that'll automatically sign you up for a 1 year, all you can eat, everything account for you guys.
On the podcast, I get a kickback from this, right? Like
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Five accounts or something. So use that podcast code and get your year long. I'm sure Corey will send this out. Maybe we'll make a VExpert code as well. Something that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. If we could do a VExpert code.
Could we name it VExpert?
I can name it whatever you like. So yeah, VExpert is.
Let's call it VExpert. We'll do. Yeah. VExpert would probably be more realistic from people, and we will get it out to our 2,000 plus VExperts, and you guys will wish you had never come on this show, because we're going to crash your servers with the volume.
So VExpert, just a VExpert, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm doing it real time. I'm doing it real time while we're on the call.
There you go. He's got oh my God. I run an online game server called First Star Online, which we run it because I got it for free, and we fixed it. It had a lot of bugs. We restored it. It's a game from probably 10, 15 years ago. But I'm an admin, and I can just go into real time and just drop gold and change things. It's amazing. So you just go in there and boom, you called it the VExpert free code. Love it. Love it.
So that's the code. So forget when I said podcast. It's now VExpert. So put that in there.
There you go. And if you're not a VExpert, don't worry. You can also use it. We're not going to do that, but you should be a VExpert. And Corey, I got to throw this back to you. When do VExpert apps open again?
They're going to open in June. I don't have an exact date yet, but the second half applications for 2020 I'm still in June.
There you go. So you can use that VExpert code on Test Drive. Do you need a code for Pathfinder, or is Pathfinder?
No, that's just you can just sign up to that with your existing VMware ID.
My VMware ID, and away you go.
Yep. And in fact, if you don't have if you don't have a Test Drive account, if you sign up on there, it'll actually create you one anyway. But use the code, and you'll get full blown non-expiring access for a year.
Okay. Do you guys have like a blog or any kind of place to go learn more, or you just go to testdrive.com?
Just go to testdrive. Basically, yeah. Everything else we put through the digital team and you guys, and that's where we want the we want that kind of proper feedback. We try not to do that on our own. We're trying to do it through the right channels.
Perfect. Okay, Rory Clements, Senior Director, Solutions Management, God of Test Drive. Thank you for coming on the show. Do you have a Twitter ID?
Yeah, it's @VMRory. It's,
at VM Rory, RORY. All right,
I
so
don't think I've tweeted anything in about a year, but yeah, it's so don't expect don't expect a lot of updates.
the big Twitter guy. All right. Well, yeah, there you go. But we can get you some followers.
I appreciate it.
We'll suck you into this because now that we got that vExpert code, you're going to become the man. You're going to be at VMworld. You're going to be the most popular session guy ever. It's going to be fantastic. Awesome.
Oh dear.
All right,
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for carving time out and coming on our show and showcasing your home real library environment with that nice Mac. That is awesome. Pretty good job.
Real.
All right, with that, we'll switch over to the V Barbecue Report. We'll just close out with the V Barbecue Report. So I got some V Barbecue Report. I'll do mine first. We'll switch to Tony Foster, and then we'll let Corey follow up at the end. So my V Barbecue Report is I got to do a shout out to Roger Lund, who had been doing barbecue last week, and he put a can of baked beans in the coals. So he's doing steak or hamburgers, I don't know what he's doing. But in there, in the shot that he put on social, was actually a can of baked beans. He puts the baked beans, he cuts a couple holes in the top. He just uses a can opener, cuts a small set of holes in the top of the can so it doesn't explode, puts it in the charcoals. I guess if you're smoking, the baked beans will pick up the smoke from the holes so that the baked beans actually have a smoky charcoal flavor as well. So that's my barbecue report. I'm going to do that next time I do some barbecue. I'm going to get some baked bean cans and stick in there, and I'll be good to go. Tony Foster, what have you got for barbecue?
So this last weekend I did ribs, full rack of ribs in the smoker. And I did it with a killer glaze I made out of brown sugar, some honey, some bourbon. It was just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I gotta say, I did a couple slabs of ribs a couple weeks ago. Used Mr. Stubbs dry rub, and I've been trying to cut back because I'm eating way too much during home quarantine. But those things lasted a week. Like, have a rib every once in a while, just cut one off and eat it cold. Wow, really good. Yes, sounds great. Can't go wrong with ribs with a nice sauce. I learned how to slow smoke it. Manage your charcoal. It's pretty fun. Corey Romero, I know you haven't done barbecue in a while. Did you finally get back in the game?
You know what? I am. I'm finally back in the game. I used to barbecue, 2-3 times a week. We do anything from ribs to tri-tip to brisket to pork belly, all kinds of stuff. So, from moving to California to Utah, the weather's changed, and I've been wanting to do some smoking with my Traeger, and my Traeger's been buried in snow up until maybe 4 weeks ago. So last weekend brought it out, got it fired up, and we did a tri-tip. One thing I really miss about California is I found a place that had the best tri-tips. So I've got to find another place out here. But I did order some stuff. It's called Molly's Mustard. If you guys ever want to get like the best base for ribs, I put Molly's Mustard on these ribs. It is ridiculous. It's a yellow mustard with a little bit of spice on it, and it's a jalapeno spice. And usually I'm not a fan of mustard, but every person I've cooked these ribs for just rave and just can't wait for me to make these ribs again. But they're fantastic. Can't wait to continue being back in the game for sure.
All right. I would say that California's tri-tip is the best tri-tip in the whole planet. And if you go down to Southern California, you get yourself a nice dry rub and you rub tri-tip on, man, there is nothing better. But I got to do a shout out to Molly's Mustard. Going to have to give that a try. And with that, we're at the end of the show. Hope everybody enjoyed it. We will be back again next week. And until then, stay sane. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.